Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today into neophobia in adults with autism.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we want to really get into it. Like, why does new freak some people out, and what can you actually do about it? We found this awesome blog post from Cheap ABA.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's got some really great advice.
I'm intrigued. So, neophobia, this fear of new things,
Right.
it's not just like, I don't like change.
Yeah, yeah.
This is like a real fear, deeply rooted in how the autistic brain works.
It makes me think about everyday stuff. Like, imagine trying a new food or your routine gets messed up. That's got
Or,
to be more than just picky eating, right?
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
The blog post breaks down like 4 reasons why neophobia is so common with autism. And it all goes back to like how the autistic brain processes stuff and tries to stay safe. So first, sensory sensitivity.
Right.
Imagine a world where everything's like turned up to 11. Sounds, lights, textures, all super intense.
Wow, yeah.
That's what it's like for a lot of autistic people.
I see.
So, a new environment, that can just be overwhelming.
Like their senses are in overdrive, always taking in stuff that most people just tune out.
Exactly.
That makes even little changes feel huge.
Huge, yeah. And then there's the predictability thing. Routines, they give comfort, a sense of control. It's like a safe haven.
Mm-hmm.
When that routine gets disrupted, it triggers unease, anxiety.
Like you said, the world can feel chaotic. It's like the routine is a roadmap and suddenly you're lost off the map.
And on top of all that, you've got social anxiety.
Oh, right. Of course.
New situations usually mean new people, unpredictable interactions,
Yeah.
which can be incredibly stressful.
So it's like this triple whammy, new sensations, broken routine, plus the social stuff. No wonder new feels scary.
It's a lot to handle. The blog post also talks about cognitive rigidity. People think it's just being stubborn.
Yeah.
But it's really about how the brain works, processing info. Think about trying to change your morning routine.
Okay, yeah.
For someone with cognitive rigidity, that mental shift, super hard. It's not resistance, it's their brain wiring.
Wow. This is giving me a much better understanding of the challenges. But what's the real impact here? Is this just a little annoying or does it have bigger consequences?
Oh, it's way beyond annoying.
Yeah.
One of the most serious things is social isolation.
Right. Makes sense.
If you're always avoiding new experiences, you miss out. Gatherings, new friends, all those chances to connect
Yeah.
over time, that leads to loneliness, feeling disconnected.
It's like your world shrinks, one avoided experience at a time.
Exactly. And with that shrinking, missed opportunities, fewer joys, skills learned, Imagine never trying a new food, never traveling, never stepping outside your comfort zone.
Wow, yeah. That's a powerful thought.
Limits your world big time.
And then there's the mental health side of it, right?
Yeah.
All this anxiety can't be good.
Definitely not. Imagine the constant stress, always worrying about the next new thing, the next change.
Ugh, yeah. Exhausting.
That takes a toll. Anxiety disorders, depression, sleep problems, so many things.
It's serious. Okay, so we're painting a pretty heavy picture here, but I know there's hope.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
The blog post doesn't just dump the problem on us. It talks about solutions, too, right?
Right. There are things you can do. Proven strategies to manage, even overcome neophobia.
Okay, good.
You can start taking back control today. One of the best is gradual exposure.
Gradual exposure, okay.
Yeah, instead of jumping in the deep end, baby steps at your own pace.
Makes sense.
Like, if new foods are tough, maybe you just start by smelling a new dish.
Oh, interesting.
Then a tiny bite. It's about building confidence slowly.
So you're not overwhelmed.
Exactly.
That gradual approach seems key, especially with the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
What about in-the-moment anxiety? I know the blog mentioned mindfulness and meditation. Can you explain those a bit?
Oh, yeah. They can be super helpful.
Okay.
Mindfulness helps you just observe those thoughts without judging them. And meditation, it calms your body's stress response.
So it's about finding that peace, even when you're anxious.
Training your mind to react differently. That's pretty cool. But what about changing the thought patterns themselves? I know they mentioned CBT and ACT.
Oh, those are therapies.
Yeah, what's the difference?
They both target those negative thoughts, but in different ways. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, helps you actually challenge those thoughts.
Like, I can't do this kind of thought.
Exactly, and replace them with more balanced ones. Acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. It's more about accepting those feelings,
Okay.
but still taking action. You're not trying to erase the fear.
Right.
You learn to move forward with it.
So two different paths to the same place, a place where fear doesn't control you. This isn't something you have to face alone, right?
No way. Support is huge.
Good.
Having understanding friends, family, even an online community can make a world of difference. And don't forget professional help. Therapists who specialize in autism.
Okay, so building a toolkit of strategies, finding your people.
Exactly.
I think to make this really click, we need a real-world example.
Ooh, good idea.
How do these strategies actually play out?
Okay, let's say you love your routine, but you've been wanting to join your coworkers for their weekly hangout after work.
I feel that. Sounds daunting.
Right. Big step outside that comfort zone.
So how do those strategies we talked about help in that kind of situation?
Okay, so instead of a crowded, noisy bar, maybe you suggest meeting one coworker for coffee.
Yeah.
One-on-one.
I see. Less overwhelming.
Exactly. You dip your toe in the social pool without the sensory overload.
Great example of gradual exposure. Still connecting, but manageable.
Right. And before you even go, mindfulness can help with those pre-meeting jitters. Just notice your breath. Be present. It can really ease anxiety.
Setting yourself up for success, both with practical stuff like gradual exposure and those mental tools. But what about when things don't go so well?
Oh, yeah.
Because progress isn't always a straight line, is it?
No, definitely not. There will be days when the anxiety feels huge, like impossible. And that's okay. Progress isn't linear.
You'll have good days and bad days. So how do you deal with the tougher days? Is that where self-compassion comes in?
Yes, exactly. Be kind to yourself. You're doing your best. That's enough. Sometimes just acknowledging the challenge is a victory.
Being gentle with yourself. It's so easy to get caught up in wanting to be fixed or cured.
Yeah,
Sometimes just showing up and doing what you can is huge.
absolutely. Thinking about everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
it really shows how important understanding and acceptance are, not just for individuals, but for society too.
That's a great point. We've talked about personal stuff like coping mechanisms and support, but this goes way beyond that, right?
Oh, for sure. It's about creating a world where neurodiversity is celebrated, not just tolerated,
I love that.
where neophobia is met with compassion, not judgment.
Okay, so how do we change that perspective? How do we go from individual understanding to a more inclusive world?
Well, education is key. The more people understand autism, the more they can appreciate the strengths and challenges that come with it. It's about challenging those old ideas, the stereotypes.
So instead of seeing neophobia as a weakness, we see it as a different way of experiencing the world.
Right. A way that brings unique strengths.
And those strengths are worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
Imagine a workplace that values that meticulous attention to detail, the deep focus, things that often come with neophobia.
I know. Right.
It's seeing the value of those different ways of thinking, neurodivergent perspectives that actually make our teams, communities better.
Exactly. And that leads to action. Advocating for accommodations, support systems that help autistic individuals thrive.
Like sensory-friendly spaces, predictable routines, access to mental health professionals.
Yes, creating environments where everyone feels safe to be themselves, contribute, live fulfilling lives.
And that's where those support networks come in. Professional and peer support. Having people who get it,
It makes such a difference.
that sense of belonging, validation, hope. You can get through these challenges together. You know, what really strikes me is the power of self-advocacy.
Oh, yeah.
We've touched on it, but it seems crucial, especially when the world isn't always designed for neurodiversity.
You're so right. Self-advocacy empowers people to communicate their needs, set boundaries, create environments that work for them.
It's about owning your experience, using your voice to shape a world that fits.
I love that.
Because ultimately, we all want to feel safe, comfortable, and understood, right? It's about creating a world where everyone can thrive, regardless of how their brain is wired. And I think that's a beautiful goal to strive for.
I agree. So picture this. You love your routine,
Mhm.
but you've been wanting to, like, join those coworker hangouts, the after-work thing they
Well,
do.
yeah, every week.
Yeah,
That sounds kind of scary, actually. Big step out of the comfort zone.
right. So how do you use those strategies?
Yeah, good question. Like in real life.
Okay, so instead of that crowded bar all loud and stuff,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that.
maybe you say, hey, want to grab a coffee? Just you and one coworker.
Oh, that's smart. Much less intense.
Right. You ease into the social thing without, like, the sensory overload.
Perfect example of gradual exposure. Still connecting, but like on your terms.
Exactly. And even before that coffee,
Hmm.
mindfulness
Yeah.
helps with those pre-meeting jitters.
I could use that.
Just pay attention to your breathing, be present,
Mhm.
really calms you down.
So it's like double prep. You've got the practical plan, the gradual exposure,
All right.
and then the mental tools to handle the anxiety. But what about those days when,
When it's hard.
yeah, when it just feels impossible? Progress isn't always perfect, is it?
Oh, no, definitely not. Some days the anxiety wins, feels overwhelming,
Mm.
and that's okay.
It's okay to have those days.
Yeah. Progress isn't a straight line. There are bumps.
Good point. So how do you deal with those tough days? Is that where self-compassion comes in?
Exactly. You got to be kind to yourself. It's like, hey, I'm doing my best here. Sometimes just acknowledging the struggle, that's huge.
Instead of beating yourself up?
Right. Sometimes showing up is enough.
Yeah, I like that. Thinking back to all this neophobia stuff,
Yeah.
the brain science, the impact,
Mm.
it really shows how important understanding is, not just for the person with autism, but for everyone else too.
It goes beyond just the individual.
Right, like we talked about coping skills, finding support. But it's bigger than that, isn't it?
It's societal.
Mm.
It's about creating a world where neurodiversity is celebrated, not just like tolerated,
Celebrate it, I love
where
that.
people get it. Neophobia is met with compassion.
Not judgment.
Right.
Okay, so how do we shift that whole perspective from like, okay, I get it, to actually building a more inclusive world?
Well, education is a big one. The
Mhm.
more people know about autism,
Mhm.
the more they can appreciate the whole picture. Strengths, challenges, all of it. It's about busting those myths, those stereotypes.
So instead of neophobia equals weakness,
Right.
it's neophobia is a different way of experiencing the world.
Exactly. And it comes with unique strengths.
You can't forget
No
that.
way.
Imagine like a workplace that values that,
Yeah.
that detail-oriented focus, the deep thinking, stuff that often comes with neophobia.
Right. A valuable asset.
So we need to see the value in those different ways of thinking. Like neurodiversity actually makes us better.
Teams, communities, everything.
And that leads to action, right? We need to fight for accommodations, support systems that actually help people thrive.
Absolutely. Like sensory-friendly spaces,
Yeah.
predictable routines at work, access to professionals who get it.
Creating environments where everybody feels safe,
Yeah.
where they can be themselves, use their skills, and, just live a good life.
Exactly. That's where those support networks come in. Professionals and peers. Having people who get it makes all the difference.
It's that feeling of, like, I belong. My experience is valid. There's hope.
And you can face these challenges together. It's huge.
Huge. What's really hitting me is self-advocacy.
Oh, yeah. Crucial.
We talked about it a bit, but it seems especially important when the world isn't built for everyone's brain.
It's so true. Self-advocacy gives people the power to say, this is what I need, to set those boundaries, create a better environment for themselves.
So it's owning your experience, using your voice to shape a world that actually fits. We're back, part 3 of our deep dive. And, thinking about everything we've talked about, the reasons, the strategies, the bigger picture, it all comes back to communication, doesn't it?
That's such a good point. It really does. Whether it's managing your own anxiety or like trying to change the world, you got to communicate.
And that can be extra hard when you're dealing with neophobia, right? Like, if new situations already make you anxious, how do you speak up?
Totally. That's where self-advocacy comes in. The blog post mentions it, but we should dig deeper.
Yes, let's do it. Because knowing the theory is one thing, but actually doing it, that's where the magic happens. So for someone with neophobia, what does self-advocacy actually look like?
Well, first, you got to know yourself. Like, what are your needs? What are your boundaries? What sets off your anxiety? What would help you feel more comfortable?
So getting clear on what you need to feel safe.
Exactly. Then you got to communicate that. Maybe he's telling a friend, hey, that loud restaurant, not my thing. Or asking for a quiet workspace.
It's about finding your voice and using it to shape your world.
And sometimes it means saying no. Like, it's okay to turn down an invite if it feels overwhelming. You're not being selfish. You're taking care of yourself.
It's setting those boundaries. I think that's so important, especially for people with autism who, might be extra sensitive to social stuff.
Absolutely. And here's the cool part. Self-advocacy isn't just about asking for things. It's also about sharing your perspective. People with autism have so much to offer. And often, those neophobic tendencies, they come with real strengths.
Oh, tell me more about that. What kind of strengths?
Well, think about it. The same brain that struggles with new is often amazing at patterns, focus, details. Those are super valuable skills in science, tech, art, all sorts of fields.
So it's like flipping the script. What we think of as a weakness might actually be a strength. It's about valuing neurodiversity.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And by advocating for yourself, you're not just helping yourself. You're showing everyone the awesomeness of neurodiversity, all the different ways brains can be amazing.
I love that. So powerful. As we wrap up this deep dive, I really want our listeners to feel hopeful. Yeah, neophobia is tough, but there's also resilience, strength, and incredible potential within the autistic community.
For sure. And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep learning, keep exploring, keep connecting with people who get it. There's a whole world out there, and you have the power to make it work for you.
Beautifully said. We hope this deep dive gave you some good info, some tools to handle neophobia, and most importantly, the confidence to embrace your unique strengths. You got this.